Welcome to Xian Ni, Renegade Immortal. By author, Ergen. Chapters 44 through 54. Audio read provided by Board Panda Cafe. Chapter 44, Li Shan. Wang Lin pondered for a while and said, "What plans do you have? Do you need my help for anything?" Wang Hao sighed and said, "You are only at the 3rd layer. You can't help me because Lu Yunji is already at the 6th layer. Also, because he can produce pills, he is loved by the elders. I have already given up hope. Wang Lin, in these last few years in the Heng-Yue sect, you are my only friend and my big brother. If you become stronger in the future, you have to avenge me." Wang Hao tightened his fists after he finished speaking. Wang Lin stared at Wang Hao and nodded. Wang Hao bitterly smiled and said, "Brother Taiju, did you need me for something? While I'm still alive, I'll help you as much as I can. Do you want some qi gathering pills? I have a lot of them." Wang Lin looked at Wang Hao. He gave up on asking Wang Hao for the materials he needed and shook his head. He wanted to help Wang Hao, but the enemy was at the 6th layer. Wang Lin was not confident at all. Although his divine sense was different from others, and he had practiced the attraction technique for more than 20 years, he had never fought with any other human, so he couldn't say for sure how strong he was. Wang Hao saw that Wang Lin stayed silent. He bitterly patted his clothes and said, "Brother Taiju, you have more talent than I do. Thinking back to when we were taking the test, it felt like a dream. Time passes by too quickly." Wang Hao sighed and turned to leave with a gloomy expression. He slowly disappeared from Wang Lin's view. In this cultivation world, the strong prey on the weak. Wang Lin pondered this deeply in his heart as he stared at the sky. At that moment, Wang Lin had an epiphany. The so-called epiphany wasn't one where he suddenly gained understanding and his cultivation suddenly increased, but more like knowledge being poured into one's brain. What was increased here wasn't one's cultivation or soul but his understanding of heaven and earth. His epiphany was realizing the cruel nature of the cultivation world. To be a cultivator, one must have the attitude of a cultivator. Wang Lin mumbled as he let out a sigh, "Is the strong preying on the weak really the mentality a cultivator must have?" His body moved, and he disappeared from where he was. When he was on his way back to the herb garden, Wang Lin's expression suddenly changed as he looked at the guest rooms that the Xuan Dao sect disciples were staying at and thoughtfully walked toward it. Before he even entered, he heard an exaggerated voice from inside. "I have to say, brothers of the Heng-Yue sect, this flying sword I have is one of the peerless treasures of the Xuan Dao sect. It is called the Noon Money Sword. You guys ask around yourselves to know how much trouble I spent stealing this sword. If any of you want to buy this, then you have to vow not to use it in the exchange in 3 days, or I'm not selling it." Someone immediately asked, with doubt, "Is this treasure really as amazing as you say it is?" I, Li Shan, would never lie. If you guys don't believe me, then forget it. I can sell this flying sword anywhere. Wang Lin already found this place to be unusual, as a lot of disciples from both sects were gathered here. When he walked closer, he saw a 20-something-year-old disciple of the Xuan Dao sect holding a sword made of glowing blue coins, talking bombastically about the sword. The Xuan Dao sect disciples in the surroundings all had weird expressions on their faces. One of them couldn't stand it anymore. He coughed and said, "What junior brother Li Shan said is correct. This Noon Money Sword is indeed a treasure of our Xuan Dao sect, but I have to say that the one in junior brother Li Shan's hand is a fake. However, it still has some uses." The Heng-Yue sect disciples talked among themselves. Then, a 5th layer disciple walked forward. Wang Lin remembered that this disciple was named Zhao. Disciple Zhao walked up to Li Shan, and they talked among themselves until they made an exchange, with smiles on both of their faces. Among the inner disciples, there were people who knew about the sword and mockingly said, "It is just a simple iron sword with some broken spirit gold," and someone dared to try to sell it. It seems the Xuan Dao sect is worth only so much. Li Shan immediately retorted, "What this brother said is incorrect. My elder apprentice brother even said that this was a fake, but your Heng Yue sect still had someone who bought it. This type of thing is best to buy for the sake of novelty." The Heng Yue sect disciple who bought the sword laughed and said, "Brother Li Shan, what you said is wrong. I didn't buy this sword to collect but to give it to my dad. My family raises pigs, so this sword would be perfect for killing pigs." Li Shan didn't get mad and said, smiling, "Since you already bought it, I don't care what you do with it. Okay, I still have another treasure. It's called the invincible dark stinking thunder ball. This thing really is a treasure. I'm not lying. We can even do a live test." With that, he took out a black ball and threw it at a wall. With a boom, cracks appeared on the wall. A dark mist covered the spot where the ball hit, and emitted a foul odor. Li Shan said, with a proud and smiling face, "How is it? This invincible dark stinking thunder ball is my own personal hidden weapon. Although the power isn't strong, if it lands on someone, this sludge is something even I can't wash off. Especially the smell, which is something I made after gathering dozens of beasts. Anyone would be disgusted by it." Everyone was stunned and stared at each other with their mouths wide open. A few female disciples pinched their noses and took a few steps back. Wang Lin was also surprised. He sent out his divine sense, and his expression suddenly turned strange. The disciples of the Xuandao sect all felt really awkward, but Li Shan was known in the Xuandao sect for making weird things. No one dared to mess with him because no one wanted to get hit by one of those stink bombs. The invincible black sludge stink bomb was really famous in the Xuandao sect. Secretly, it could almost match one of the sect's real treasures. So, how was it? This time, I'm showing you all my hidden ace, but I still have to say the same thing I said earlier: you can't use it in the exchange in 3 days, or I won't sell it to you. Li Shan revealed a serious expression but secretly laughed in his heart, "You silly brats, the more I say you mustn't use it, the more likely you guys will use it in the exchange. Hee hee, there will be a good show to see. The elders will definitely praise me and even give me a few magical treasures." With that, his eyes lit up, and he began to shout. Chapter 45, Low Life. Fellow brothers of the Heng Yue sect, there is an old saying, killing people only takes a nod of the head. But I have to ask everyone, how could killing people be as satisfying as disgracing them? By disgracing them, they would stink for 10,000 years. Think about it, when you are fighting with your rival, and you use this, even if you don't win, you still come out with more face than them. Or when escaping, if you have this move, it also works wonders. If you run into a crowded area, how would he still have the face to chase after you? Also, if you encounter a love rival, this could also be a deciding move. Hee hee, if anyone dares to steal your woman, use this on them, and then he would never have a chance, as she would never want to be around the stink. Li Shan's advertising moved many inner sect disciples, especially when he talked about how it could be used against love rivals. That really resonated with some of the disciples. This thing was really a top-quality item to get rid of love rivals. Li Shan's gaze shifted toward Wang Lin in the distance. He knew that Wang Lin was considered trash in the Heng Yue sect. People like him were big customers for Li Shan. The trash back in the Xuandao sect had already been cleaned out by him, so when he saw Wang Lin, he excitedly continued, "This bomb is especially useful for brothers with lower cultivation. With this stink bomb in hand, who would dare to bully you again? If anyone dares to bully you, throw one at them. I, Li Shan, can promise you that you can walk tall in the sect without anyone daring to bother you." With that, Li Shan secretly laughed in his heart. No one daring to bully you was impossible. It was more like it would invite a beating. Li Shan saw that he had almost won many people over. He quickly tried to seal the deal. This stink bomb is a really good self-defense weapon for the people with lower cultivation. Today, I'll have a sale. Buy 2, get 1. Consider it a gift from me. When we meet again in the cultivation world, don't forget to take care of me." Among the disciples that were moved by everything he said, one asked, "Is this item really as amazing as you say? Take out a few more, and let me randomly test one. If it's really that good, I'll buy a few to play with." Xian took out a dozen of the stink bombs from his bag of holding and gently placed them on the ground as if he was afraid they would explode. He said, "You must remember to be careful with this treasure. Gently pick it up and place it down. When using it, just toss it. When it meets any resistance, it will explode." The inner disciple who had spoken up was Sun Hao. Sun Hao stepped up and carefully picked up one of the stink bombs and examined it in his hand. Xian's expression remained normal, but he quietly mocked him in his heart. "Little brat, think you can understand it? Besides the sect's elders, not even the senior brothers can see through its secret." Sun Hao looked at it for a long time and couldn't find anything special about the stink bomb. He threw the stink bomb into a distant clearing, and as the bomb flew in an arc, the moment it was about to hit the ground, Xian thought in his mind, "Explode." With a bang, the stink bomb exploded, making the ground black and filled with a foul odor. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. No one knew that his divine sense had covered the area. When the stink bomb exploded, he detected a fluctuation of spirit power from Xian. When Xian threw the stink bomb the first time, it was the same. Wang Lin chuckled, but he didn't point it out and kept on watching. Xian said, smiling, "How was it? These stink bombs are really powerful, right? But I, Xian, am an honest man, so I'll say the ugly stuff now. This treasure doesn't explode all the time. To make it explode requires a certain throwing technique. Once you guys have bought it, you can figure it out yourself, so don't come to me about it." Sun Hao walked up to Xian and whispered something to him. They walked over to the side, and he took out quite a few things. Xian thought about it for a while and took out 10 stink bombs to exchange. Xian whispered, "You normally only get 3 free for buying 6, but since you are the first buyer, I'll throw in 1 more for free." After one person traded for them first and even tested them, a few other inner disciples came up and bought a few. Every time Xian finished his sale, he would always add a few words. Things like, "This thing isn't guaranteed to succeed all the time, and if it doesn't work, practice it a few more times." If there are any questions, they could come and ask him, and he could teach them the throwing technique. When saying this, Xian laughed in his heart, "You guys will try several times and fail, then try a different one and succeed after 1 or 2 tries. I'm only going to be here for a few days, so by the time you guys suspect me, I'll be long gone." But there were still many disciples who were cautious and didn't buy any. After a while, there were only a few stink bombs left. Xian proudly looked at the Heng Yue sect disciples and thought, "A bunch of idiots. Humph, if you guys don't use it in the exchange in 3 days, then all you'll have done is get cheated by me, but if you do use it, then there will be something good to watch. These stink bombs are completely under my control. Other people can't even explode it using a hammer. I really can't wait for the exchange in 3 days." His gaze swept the surroundings, and he noticed Wang Lin's faint smile. He was stunned. His eyes turned, and he said, "Brother, why don't you buy a few to play with? With your cultivation, these are truly fitting for you. If anyone bothers you, just throw one at them." Wang Lin looked at Xian and revealed a mocking expression. Xian was surprised. That look made him feel as if Wang Lin had seen through his secret. He carefully looked at Wang Lin and saw that Wang Lin was only at the 3rd layer. Being called trash couldn't have been for no reason, so he thought that it must have been his own imagination. Wang Lin lightly smiled. He nodded and said, "Okay, I'll exchange for 2, but I don't have any treasures. Only talismans from the sect." Xian hesitated for the first time. He made sure Wang Lin was only at the 3rd layer before he finally relaxed and took out 3 stink bombs. He smiled and said, "Brother, I'll give you face and sell them for talismans." Buy 2, get 1. These stink bombs will give you an extraordinary feeling, ha ha. Finished speaking, he thought, I wasn't lying when I said it would be an extraordinary feeling. As long as you hold on to the stink bombs, even if you don't use them during the exchange, and if I ever meet you again, I'll let you know what the extraordinary feeling is like. Something you will remember for life, ha ha. Chapter 46, Strange Old Man. Wang Lin put away the stink bomb and looked at Li Shan. He said, Brother Li Shan, I won't bother you anymore, so please continue selling. Li Shan nodded. He revealed a friendly expression and said, Brother, you must be careful with those stink bombs. Remember, they don't always work because they require a certain throwing technique. If you don't succeed, don't say I lied to you. With that, he continued to tout to the other people. Fellow brothers, I still have another treasure. This is a keepsake from the Xuanhuan sect. With this, you can go to the Xuanhuan sect to get a beautiful girl. This is something I got through a lot of painstaking effort, but I'll sell it based on our friendship. Fellow brothers of the Heng sect, you mustn't miss out on this chance. Wang Lin chuckled. He turned around and headed back to the herb garden. Not long after, he had arrived at the garden. He scanned the garden and found that Sun Dezu was not there, so he sat down cross-legged in his room and took out the 3 stink bombs to examine them. After a long time, Wang Lin revealed an interested expression. These stink bombs appeared transparent under his divine sense, as if there were no secrets they could hide. To say it simply, there was a trace of Li Shan's divine sense in the stink bombs that allowed him to detonate them at will. Wang Lin never knew that divine sense could be used like this. After carefully mimicking it, he overlapped the divine sense in the stink bombs with his. He didn't destroy Li Shan's divine sense but surrounded it. If he wished to, he could destroy it at any time. The use of divine sense on this stink bomb inspired Wang Lin. He pondered a little and took out the mysterious bead. If divine sense can be used like this, can it be used the same way on the bead? Wang Lin's eyes lit up, and his divine sense quickly gathered on the mysterious bead. After a long time, Wang Lin frowned. The stone bead looked like it hadn't changed, and under his divine sense, it looked the same as always as well. He pondered for a moment, then he took the stone bead and left the herb garden. At the fastest speed, he went to a secluded place in the mountains and entered the dream space. The moment he entered, he knew that time was of the essence, and he quickly spread out his divine sense. 1 minute, 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes. There was no change. Wang Lin rubbed his chin and muttered, Can I really not leave my divine sense inside the mysterious bead? At that moment, one of the glowing objects suddenly began to shine brightly, then finally dimmed. Wang Lin was startled. Then, like a chain reaction, other glowing objects started to dim. Soon, all of the glowing objects in the dream space dimmed until there was no light remaining, and the dream space became completely dark. Wang Lin was shocked. He carefully observed for a long time, and couldn't find anything unusual. An old voice suddenly echoed. I don't need to observe anymore. With your spiritual movement stage, trying to see through the heaven-defying bead is just wishful thinking. Wang Lin was startled, and his pupils shrank. He had been in the dream space for dozens of years, and this was the first time he had heard someone else speak. Wang Lin took a deep breath. He suppressed the shock in his heart. He clasped his hands and respectfully said, Junior's name is Wang Lin, and Senior is. Wang Lin was an intelligent man. He didn't think that the person had suddenly appeared, but had been there all along and had observed him for the 30 years he had been in here. As a junior of this small country, you don't have the need to know this old man's name. You used nearly 30 years of time with my help and the help of the stone bead and only reached the spiritual movement stage. That is truly disappointing. Especially your perception. You only now thought of using your divine sense to scan the bead. Humph. Wang Lin pondered for a while. He had observed the stone bead with his divine sense before but just hadn't observed for as long as now. Your way of doing things really annoys me. Cultivating is a heaven-defying act. If anyone goes against you, you should kill them. I have observed you in these few years, how you have been at this dog shit sect. If I were you, I would have killed all of them already. Humph. If anyone dared to insult me, I would destroy them completely, especially that Wang Chuo. He really gets on my nerves. With my temper, I would have taken his soul and thrown it into purgatory and then wiped out his family. I really like that Jiang Hu in your sect. Quite vicious. Also, that Junior Lu really suits this old man's tastes. Wang Lin's expression became odd. He wryly smiled, Senior, Don't interrupt me. I haven't finished speaking. Humph, your small sect also has quite a few good-looking ladies. You really don't know how to enjoy yourself. If it were me, I would have caught them and refined them for their soul. Hee hee, the taste really makes me reminisce about the past. I haven't tasted it in over 30 years. Wang Lin was dumbfounded and couldn't speak for a long time. Rat, can you work a bit harder? Hurry up and reach the soul transformation stage so this old man can come out. Sigh. Wang Lin hesitated. He was somewhat confused and asked, Senior, what is the soul transformation stage? Also, what did you mean when you said I was at the spiritual movement stage? Can't you think for yourself? Always asking about everything. Forget it. For a little cultivator from only a rank 3 cultivation country, even if you think until your head explodes, you won't figure it out. Humph. Listen well, brat. I'm talking about the cultivation realm of a rank 5 cultivation country. In a rank 3 cultivation country like yours, there are only 4 realms: chi condensation, foundation establishment, core formation, and nascent soul. As for the soul formation stage, it would be a thing of legend in your eyes. Once someone reaches the spirit forming stage, then your country's rank will be increased to a rank 4 cultivation country. With that, the country will be provided the appropriate resources from the Cultivation Alliance, and the country will also gain the right to fight for cultivation stars outside the country. The country would also need to undertake missions to protect the Alliance. Similarly, if a soul transformation appears in a rank 4 country, it would be raised to a rank 5 country, and so on. As for the spiritual movement stage, it is a stage commonly used in rank 4 countries or higher. It is similar to the chi condensation stage but has a broader range. Translator's note: spirit forming and soul formation are used interchangeably. This might become confusing in the upcoming chapters, so I'll aim to use soul formation for consistency purposes. Chapter 47, Exchange Part 1. Wang Lin bitterly smiled and said, soul transformation is simply too far away for Junior. Bullshit. With me, who is from a rank 6 country, helping you, what is the soul transformation stage at all? Although I can't go out, I have been using my nascent soul essence to help you cultivate for these past 30 years, otherwise, with your lack of talent, how could you have reached this stage in 30 years? And because you absorbed my nascent soul essence, besides people on the same cultivation level as me, no one else can see through your cultivation. Also, with the heaven-defying bead in your hands, what do you have to be afraid of? It took me painstaking effort to obtain this bead when it appeared in the Cultivation Alliance, resulting in me losing my body. My soul would have been destroyed if I hadn't escaped into this bead. Originally, I wanted to find another body to use, but this damned heaven-defying bead. It seems that if someone without a body enters it, they can't leave. I won't lie to you. When I first saw you, I wanted to take over your body, but this heaven-defying bead is like a cage that prevents me from leaving. I studied this bead for many years. This bead must have an owner before many of its effects can be used, and I can be released. When I obtained this bead, I was being hunted, but I had some time to study it. It must absorb the essence of the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth before it would identify an owner. But even so, the owner has to have reached soul transformation before they can get me out of here. Ah, little kid, show some compassion and cultivate faster. Then, help me find a good body to use. I, Xuanhuan, will remember your kindness, and with my protection, you can live a safe and comfortable life. In the end, Xuanhuan's tone wasn't as aggressive as before but filled with regret. Wang Lin pondered a little. Right when he was about to speak, Xuanhuan's voice came again. Brat, someone came. I'll help you leave. Suddenly, the tearing feeling appeared. Wang Lin's body shook, and he opened his eyes. He sent out his divine sense and found two disciples, one male and one female, quietly walking toward Wang Lin's direction. About 30 meters away from Wang Lin, the two stopped and started to kiss and flirt with each other. Soon, they both took off all their clothes, and their moans echoed in the surroundings. Wang Lin was very familiar with these two disciples. Both of them were at the back mountain. He curiously looked at them for a while, especially at the female disciple, before he reluctantly left. Back at home, Wang Lin thought about what Xuanhuan had said. Wang Lin didn't fully believe his words, but he had really learned a lot about how the cultivation world worked. Wang Lin didn't believe he would lie about those things. 3 days later, the exchange between the Heng Yue sect and Xuan Dao sect officially began. This was a long-standing tradition between the two sects, so there wasn't too much fanfare. The location was set on the Pine Mountain peak of the Heng Yue sect. An arched stone bridge connected the two peaks of the mountain. Wang Lin had seen the peak of Pine Peak Mountain from a distance but could never get a clear look because of the clouds. Pine Peak Mountain was one of the important locations of the Heng Yue sect. It had high spiritual energy density, like the back mountain, and was where the two core formation elders went to cultivate. On top of Pine Peak Mountain was a large stone platform prepared for this exchange. It was surrounded by 8 large pillars of white jade with the Heng Yue sect's 500 years of history carved onto them. After arriving here, a majestic air radiated from the white jade pillars, and immediately transformed into killing intent that pierced the bones. Friend Huang Long, every time I see these white jade pillars, it feels different. No wonder this is a treasure of the cultivation country of Zhao. Old man Ouyang sighed and waved his hand to destroy the killing intent. Behind him, all of the Xuan Dao sect disciples were shocked. At that moment, the killing intent made them feel as if they had entered a battlefield. They felt almost crushed by this feeling until Elder Ouyang dispersed it. Fellow cultivator Ouyang, this is a treasure our founder personally made. Within 100 meters of the white pillars, any non-Heng Yue sect disciple will be pressured by a killing intent. I believe Elder Ouyang understands, so please excuse us. Huang Long's face remained calm. His hand formed a seal, and a gentle light shot out from the white jade pillars. Like large hands, the lights moved the clouds that covered the peak away. The killing intent also disappeared. Before him, all the inner disciples cracked their knuckles. Elder Ouyang turned and talked with the other two elders before saying, "No worries. According to the old rules, we will send the first person. Lu Feng, you can go." Lu Feng was the male with the pure water spirit root. He smiled, then took a deep breath and arrived on the stage like lightning. He said, in a clear voice, "Xuan Dao sect's Lu Feng asks the Heng Yue sect for pointers." Wang Lin stood behind Sun Dezu with the flying sword on his back, wearing his red disciple clothes. He looked quite majestic. Sun Dezu was very satisfied with his disciple's appearance. Ever since Wang Lin had reached the 3rd layer, whenever he looked at Wang Lin, he was no longer as annoyed as before. Although he was far from liking Wang Lin, he was at least starting to see Wang Lin as his disciple. Of course, all of this depended on whether or not Wang Lin could manage to get past the 3rd layer. If, after 8 to 10 years, Wang Lin was still stuck at the 3rd layer, then Sun Dezu would probably hate Wang Lin again. In these 3 days, Wang Lin almost never left home. He spent most of that time in the dream space, talking with Xuanhuan. After a number of conversions, he came to some understanding about Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan was the rank 6 country of Suzaku's #1 expert. His cultivation was at an unimaginable level. He would kill anyone that annoyed him, steal anything he wanted, and was extremely arrogant. Because of the appearance of Lu Feng, the scene became very quiet. The sect head, Huang Long, looked at Lu Feng and said, "Zhao Long, you go." Zhao Long was a very quiet disciple. He was one of the disciples that had reached the 6th layer after the intense training. The Heng Yue sect sent out a 6th layer disciple in the first round. This was a rare occurrence in the exchanges. Elder Ouyang didn't mind and said, "Lu Feng, for this fight, I'll allow you to use 50% of your power." The moment he said those words, the people of the Heng Yue sect's expressions all changed. Chapter 48, Exchange Part 2. Tu Shui. Apprentice Brother Zhao beat him up and make the sect proud. Let that pretty face see how strong our Heng Yue sect is. Go, Brother Zhao. The Xuan Dao sect is too arrogant. Brother Zhao, you must make him look miserable. They even dared to say something like only use 50% of their power. The Xuan Dao sect is too cunning. They already have an excuse ready for when they lose. I'll be watching, Brother Zhao. Go? All of the Heng Yue sect disciples were riled up. Those words by the Xuan Dao sect elder hurt their self-esteem. The elders of the Heng Yue sect's faces all darkened. They stayed silent, but their eyes became cold, and their gazes toward the Xuan Dao sect became less friendly. Sun Dezu chuckled. He smiled and whispered to Wang Lin, "Disciple, watch this carefully. This exchange will be more intense than before. This is the first time the Xuan Dao sect has dared to be so arrogant." Wang Lin looked around at the angry inner disciples and then looked at Lu Feng. There was still a layer of black fog on his body that prevented Wang Lin from seeing his cultivation level. Lu Feng stood on the stage and gently said, "Brother Zhao, since our sect elder has spoken, I'll only use 50% of my power in this fight." Zhao Long was of medium height. His complexion was dark, and his body looked very strong. Instead of a cultivator, he looked more like a warrior in the mortal world. He cautiously looked at Lu Feng. He clasped his hands and said, "Brother Lu, please." When he finished speaking, he took a step, and then blooming white lotuses appeared one by one around him and floated around his body. Slivers of sword chi appeared on the white lotuses. Sounds of wind hitting Zhao Long's clothes could be heard, but there was no wind. Sect head Huang Long smiled. Zhao Long's lotus blade has already reached the mid-rank. Very good. The red-faced elder proudly said on the side, "Ha ha, sect head, Zhang Long is my favorite disciple. His talent is very good, and he is very hardworking. This lotus blade is something he picked out himself from the sword pavilion. After 5 years, he has already reached the mid-rank." Elder Su smiled and said to the surrounding disciples, "The lotus blade is known for its attack power. You inner disciples should take this opportunity to learn from him." Wang Chuo narrowed his eyes. He didn't show it on his face, but he thought, "Lotus blade. Humph, I know it as well. Give me 5 years, and I'll be stronger than him." Brother Zhao is usually so quiet. I didn't expect him to have already reached such a level with the lotus blade. Sun Hao secretly envied him, and watched carefully. On the stage, Zhao Long shouted, "Brother Lu, this lotus blade of mine is very powerful. You have to be careful." At that moment, the lotuses floating around Zhao Long started to spin rapidly, and sword chi rained down on Lu Feng. Lu Feng's expression remained calm. He quickly moved backward, formed a sign with his hand, and shouted, "Water screen." At that moment, the sky darkened, and specks of light appeared. They were water droplets. The water droplets gathered like lightning in front of Lu Feng, forming a screen of water. It shined rainbow colors and looked very pretty. Elder Ouyang faintly smiled and said to the disciples behind him, Heng Yue sect's lotus blade is a very hard technique to master. You all have to remember, if you meet this lotus blade, you mustn't try to take it head-on, but avoid it unless you're like Lu Feng, who has a pure water spirit root and can control the water at will. All the disciples nodded in agreement, all except the middle-aged man in the back, who had a look of disdain on his face. On the stage, the sword chi raining on Lu Feng hit the water screen. Zhao Long's face sank. This water screen was too strange. The moment the sword chi landed on it, they disappeared without any effect. He frowned and was about to use the same technique again, but he saw Lu Feng let out a smile. Lu Feng said, Brother Zhao, you try and take on this lotus blade. The water rippled, and sword chi shot out from the water screen and toward Zhao Long. The same technique, the same sword chi. Zhao Long's expression changed. He quickly moved backward, but the sword chi was too fast. He gritted his teeth and threw out yellow talismans from his bag of holding. The yellow talismans lit up without any fire and turned into a black mist. The sword chi landed on the black fog and dissipated. The black fog managed to block most of the sword chi before disappearing, but some sword chi still got through it and pierced Zhao Long's body. Zhao Long was launched into the air by the sword chi. He coughed out blood as he was flying in the air. He finally crashed into the ground. After struggling for a while, he failed to get up. There were many small holes throughout his body, however, none of them were that serious, so he wasn't in any life-threatening danger. Lu Feng had a very proud expression on his face. He stepped off the stage and said, Disciple listened to teacher and only used 50% of his power on the water rebound. The red-faced elder quickly moved. His body turned into a red mist, and landed next to Zhao Long's body. His expression darkened as he patted Zhao Long's body a few times and fed him some precious pills. After that, he said, a very good water screen reflects. Only someone of the 8th layer or higher can break through it. My disciple isn't that strong yet, so defeat is normal. One by one, the Xuandao sect's disciples revealed looks of joy as they talked amongst each other. Just a 6th layer disciple, and he thinks he can fight with brother Lu Feng. I knew instantly that we were going to win round 1. So true. Brother Lu's water screen is very powerful, even the elder can't stop praising it. They must be dreaming if they think they can break it. True. The Heng Yue sect's disciples are getting weaker year after year. In these past few days, I checked out the inner sect disciples, and none of them are a threat to us. That's not completely true. None of the Heng Yue sect's purple-clothed disciples have appeared yet. I heard from the elder that those are the Heng Yue sect's core disciples. Chapter 49, Exchange Part 3. Like the Xuandao sect disciples, the Heng Yue sect disciples had all joined in the last 20 years and had never seen such a bloody scene before. All of them remained silent and felt uneasy in their hearts. Sect head Huang Long's expression remained sullen. He stayed silent for a long time. He could easily see that this Lu Feng was at the 6th layer, but he didn't expect him to have such a powerful technique. His water screen couldn't be broken unless the attacker was at least at the 8th layer. This was only the first round, and it was already like this. There was bitterness in his heart. The Heng Yue sect had really fallen. He looked at his fellow apprentice brothers and saw that all of them had bitter expressions on their faces as well. Sun Dezu sucked in a breath of cold air. Motherfucker! A disciple is even more powerful than me. How does the Xuandao sect get disciples like this? How come I'm not this lucky? Wang Lin gave Lu Feng a deep look. He clearly saw what had happened. Although he was able to see through Lu Feng's cultivation when he used the water screen, Wang Lin was still shocked by the technique. Xuandao sect's elder Ouyang smiled and loudly said, Friend Wang Long, in this second round, it's your turn to send out a disciple first. Wang Long's gaze swept across each inner disciple. Each of the disciples lowered their heads, hoping not to be selected. Seeing this, Wang Long became very angry. As he was about to speak, Sun Hao clenched his teeth and said, "Sect head, although disciple isn't a genius, I'm willing to fight in the second round." The few elders' expressions all changed, and Elder Su frowned and said, "Sun Hao, you are only at the 4th layer, don't mess around." Sun Hao hesitated for a while and said, Disciple has a new technique. Although I can't win, I can still make them look bad." He thought in his heart, right now, no one wants to go, so if I go up now, I can leave a good impression with the sect head. Even if I can't win with this stink bomb, I won't look bad. "Sorry, brother Li Shan, I bought this from you, and now I'm using it on you guys. I guess it can be called karma." In these past few days, he felt that he had gained a good understanding of how to use the stink bombs. He tried it himself and failed, but after going to brother Li Shan, he finally succeeded a few times. However, due to lack of time, he didn't get to practice more, and he felt that with a few tries, he could make it work. Wang Long pondered a while and sighed. He nodded and said, "You can go. Let me see your new technique." Sun Hao straightened his body, and stepped onto the platform. He said, "Heng Yue sect disciple Sun Hao asks the Xuan Dao sect for guidance." When Li Shan saw Sun Hao, his lungs almost burst from laughing. When he saw that Elder Ouyang was about to appoint a disciple, he quickly stepped up and said, "Elder, disciple Li Shan is willing to go up and spar with him." He even winked as he was talking. Li Shan was a disciple that caused Elder Ouyang many headaches, but Ouyang also knew that Li Shan was very cunning and wouldn't do anything that was disadvantageous to him. Elder Ouyang knew that if Li Shan was willingly going up, he was 100% confident in himself, so he let him go. Li Shan excitedly went up to the stage. His heart was about to burst with excitement. He thought, "Oh, Sun Hao, you've brought this upon yourself." When Sun Hao saw Li Shan come up, his expression became strange. Li Shan loudly said, "Brother Sun Hao, come and show me your newest technique. I, Li Shan, will stand here and take your attack." Sun Hao hesitated a bit. He had already reached the level of using flying words. His hand formed a seal, and a red sword quickly flew out and floated around him, revealing a cold light. "Go?" The flying sword rapidly flew toward Li Shan, and Sun Hao took this time to take out several stink bombs. He shouted, "See my new technique." Li Shan let out a loud laugh. He easily dodged the flying swords and thought in his head, "Explode." The stink bombs in Sun Hao's hands exploded with a bang before he even threw them. A putrid stench spread out to the surroundings. Sun Hao stood there, covered in black ash, dumbfounded. He couldn't understand why these stink bombs exploded before he even threw them. Did he use too much force earlier? Li Shan let out a sigh and said, "Brother Sun Hao's move is too strong." "What is it called?" "Self-destruct. I already told you before that you need to be careful with the stink bomb, but you used too much force grabbing them, and they exploded." All of the Xuan Dao sect disciples roared with laughter, and sounds of ridicule could be heard. Even the Heng Yue sect disciples wanted to laugh, but they didn't dare to as it might anger the elders. Wang Long angrily waved his hand. A wave of wind blew the stench away and even flew the dumbfounded Sun Hao off the pine peak back to the Heng Yue peak. Elder Ouyang smiled and said, "That Sun Hao misused his technique, so we don't know his real strength. Let's call this a draw." After he finished speaking, he gave Li Shan an approving look. Wang Long gloomily said, "A loss is a loss." "How is it a draw?" "Continue." Elder Ouyang laughed and said, "No less from the largest sect 500 years ago. Su Miu, you go up." A disciple walked out from the Xuan Dao sect. He was about 24 to 25 years old. He clasped his hands together on the stage and didn't say more. Wang Long didn't call out any inner disciples but took out a piece of jade and gently crushed it. The moment it was crushed, a flash of blue light appeared on the stage. 3 people walked out of the shining blue light. These 3 people wore purple clothes. The moment those 3 appeared, they released a very strong pressure that shocked the inner disciples. Elder Ouyang's expression slightly changed, and he carefully examined those 3. The middle-aged man standing in the back of the Xuandao sect suddenly turned to them. His eyes lit up and displayed an urge to fight. When the 3 men appeared, they coldly looked at the audience. One of the 40-year-old middle-aged men said, "Xuandao sect. Humph, 20 years ago, I, Lu Song, lost, but this time, I won't." Wang Lin's pupils contracted. Among the 3 people, he only knew one of them, second apprentice brother Jiang Quang. Huang Long plainly said, "Lu Song, this time, you go." Lu Song nodded. The other 2 beside him moved off the stage and stood next to Huang Long. Lu Song. 5th, senior brother Lu Song. I heard he was at the 6th layer 20 years ago. This time, our Heng Yue sect will win for sure. Chapter 50, Exchange Part 4. He is Lu Song. I heard from the elders that he is the #1 genius in the Heng Yue sect. Xuandao sect is going to lose for sure. 5th, senior brother, go. I will follow your example. The Heng Yue sect disciples all cheered with excitement. All of the confidence they lost from the first 2 losses had started to come back. Some of the female disciples became love-struck and felt dependent on Lu Song. Huang Long also smiled faintly. He thought that since Lu Song had come out this time, he would win this round for sure. Wang Chuo jealously looked at Lu Song and softly snorted. Even the Xuandao sect disciples were filled with shock. Lu Song's fame was something they had heard of as they grew up in the past 20 years. Although Lu Song ultimately lost in the exchange, he still left a deep impression in the elders' minds. Elder Ouyang's face darkened. He said, "Su Miu, I'll allow you to remove the ancestor's seal so you can use your full power." Su Miu's expression became serious. He opened up his shirt and revealed a yellow talisman on his chest. The elders of the Heng Yue sect were stunned. After carefully looking at the talisman, they all revealed shocked expressions. Huang Long asked, "Friend Ouyang, this talisman?" Elder Ouyang's eyes lit up. He indifferently said, "Huang Long, this is something that I'll explain to you at another time. In this exchange today, I'll add another condition. If our Xuandao sect wins this time, you have to lend us the Heng Yue mountain for 500 years. Everyone's expressions changed. Huang Long narrowed his eyes and said, "Are you joking, friend Ouyang?" Elder Ouyang shook his head. He said, "Huang Long, as you can see, this talisman can't be created by someone not of the nascent soul stage. To tell you the truth, an ancestor of the Xuandao sect returned from the battlefield of a rank 4 country, and told me that all of the ancestors of the Heng Yue sect have died." Huang Long's expression changed. After pondering for a long time, he said, "Elder Ouyang, stop this nonsense, otherwise, don't blame the Heng Yue sect for not showing mercy." Elder Ouyang smiled and said, "Our Xuandao sect hasn't taken this mountain by force yet because of our friendship, so we will give you guys a fair chance in this exchange. If the Heng Yue sect wins this time, then we will leave you guys be. I already passed my message. Huang Long, let us continue this exchange." The inner disciples of the Heng Yue sect were all confused, but all of them felt giant rocks weighing down their hearts. Even the sky felt like it had darkened. Wang Lin was alarmed. It seemed that what Situ Nan said was true. The cultivation world really was separated by ranks. Sun Dezu's face was pale, and his eyes were dull. He muttered to himself, "Over? It's all over. All of the Heng Yue sect's ancestors are dead. Before, we could at least rely on the ancestors to intimidate the other sects and barely hold on, but now that the ancestors are dead, it's all over. Damn it, if it wasn't for the rank 4 countries invading 500 years ago to steal the Dragon Star, resulting in the country calling away all its nascent soul cultivators, the Heng Yue sect wouldn't be in the state it's in now. Huang Long saw his fellow brothers and inner disciples' uneasiness. He suppressed the unrest in his heart and shouted, "Everyone in the Heng Yue sect, stop panicking. Whether this is true or not will be checked by the core formation elder. What are you all worrying about? Lu Song, continue the exchange." Lu Song, who was on the stage, was also shocked by Ouyang's words, but he regained his composure. He opened his mouth and spat out a purple fog. The fog grew until it became a giant hand and grabbed toward Su Mu. Su Mu's expression slightly changed. He didn't say a word and slapped his bag of holding. 6 golden balls flew out and went toward the hand. Lu Song coldly smiled. His hand formed a seal, and the giant hand waved in the air, causing an evil wind that moved the golden balls off course. This evil wind also caused the spiritual energy in Su Mu's body to go out of control. He quickly shouted, "Explode!" The 6 golden balls simultaneously exploded. The explosion released shockwaves that blew all of the audience back a bit. Lu Song snorted and mocked, "A small trick." The giant hand formed a fist. Ignoring the explosion, the fist quickly slammed down. Su Mu's face was pale. Seeing that the hand was about to land on him, he clenched his teeth and took out a yellow talisman. The talisman looked plain. Su Mu bit his tongue and sprayed out some blood. The blood mist in the air quickly transformed into a liquid and formed a blood dragon. Su Mu didn't bat an eye and formed a seal with his hand. The blood dragon twisted and turned. It formed into a strange image that imprinted onto the talisman. The yellow talisman suddenly started to glow a glaring light as if it were a small sun. The fist dissipated in front of everyone's eyes. After Wang Lin saw this, he was shocked. He had one of those talismans as well. "It is a magic talisman." Lu Song frowned. He waved his sleeves, and 2 white dragons flew out. The white dragons flew around once and charged at Su Mu at lightning speed. Su Mu let out a pitiful laugh. He used all of his energy to resist the giant fist that came down on him. He had no energy to stop those 2 white dragons at all. Seeing that the 2 white dragons were already showing their ferocious teeth at the most dangerous moment, a cold snort came from the Xuandao sect disciples. Shortly after, a black rainbow shot out from the Xuandao sect and easily surrounded the 2 white dragons. With a cracking sound, the 2 white dragons quickly disappeared and turned into 2 silver swords. The black rainbow tightened again and broke the 2 swords in half. Lu Song's expression suddenly changed. The flying swords linked to his soul were broken, which caused him to cough out a mouthful of blood. His face revealed a horrified expression. The giant hand above Su Mu's head dissipated as well since Lu Song couldn't keep his concentration. Su Mu quickly left with the yellow talisman, looking like he was getting lucky today. Lu Song also walked off the stage with a bleak expression. Huang Long's face sank. He shouted, "Xuandao sect, don't go too far." The elders beside him also became enraged. Some of the more ill-tempered elders already took out their treasures, ready to fight. The inner disciples also saw what was going on and became angry. The remaining 2 yellow-clothed disciples all looked at the middle-aged man standing in the back of the Xuandao sect. It was him who let out that cold snort earlier. Elder Ouyang turned back and looked at the middle-aged man. He warily smiled and said, "This 3rd round is won by the Heng Yue sect. As for what just happened, Old man Ouyang, don't say any more pointless words. This Heng Yue sect is only mediocre." The middle-aged man standing in the back slowly walked forward. As he took a step, the ground suddenly split, and the crack extended all the way to the stage. Chapter 51, Entering the Stage Part 1. Meanwhile, his body moved, and he appeared on the stage. He looked at the Heng Yue sect disciples with an arrogant expression and said, "All you Heng Yue sect inner disciples can all come at once. I, Zhou Peng, will take you all on." The Heng Yue sect disciples went into an uproar. Even the Heng Yue sect elders revealed frowns. None of the people from the Xuandao sect said anything. They only revealed respectful looks. It seemed that this person's status was not low in the Xuandao sect. Elder Ouyang coughed and shouted, "Friend Wang Long, this is Zhou Peng. He is our Xuandao sect's head disciple. Let this one match decide it all. If one of your Heng Yue sect disciples can last 10 seconds, then the Heng Yue sect has won." Zhang Kuang's eyes lit up. He moved his body, landed on the stage, and then heavily said, "Such an arrogant kid. I'll test you." Zhou Peng let out a laugh and said, You appear to be at the 6th layer of qi condensation, but you're hiding your true strength. You're actually at the 8th layer. You are not strong enough." As he was speaking, a cold light flashed across his eyes. He waved his right hand, then a black snake suddenly leapt out and grew into a giant python. This python's large head looked coldly at Zhang Kuang's terrified face. It opened its mouth and inhaled, which produced an unimaginable suction force. The suction was very strange. It only affected Zhang Kuang and no one else. Zhang Kuang didn't have the power to resist. Before he could even use any techniques, his body acted like a kite with its string broken and was sucked toward the python. Zhou Peng sneered. He raised his right hand and grabbed Zhang Kuang's neck. He said, "Go back and train for a few dozen years before coming back to look for me." With that, he threw Zhang Kuang out with his right hand. The last remaining purple-clothed disciple went to catch Zhang Kuang but wasn't able to counteract the force, so they both slid on the ground for a very long distance before finally stopping. Zhang Kuang's face was very pale. His eyes were closed, and his body constantly trembled. On his neck was a black handprint, as if there was a hand firmly clamped on his neck. The purple-clothed disciple that caught him had a look of horror on his face, and was silent. Huang Long's heart was very bitter. The Xuandao sect's head disciple was simply too strong. Based on what happened just now, this person was at least at the 10th layer. He surely had a talisman hiding his cultivation level, so the exact level wasn't known. Then, he looked at the surrounding inner disciples. Huang Long let out a sigh. Even the head disciple, who was with the core formation elders, didn't have a good chance of winning because he was only at the 10th layer. If he loses the fight, then the Heng Yue sect will have completely lost. Huang Long wryly smiled. "Fine. It seems my Heng Yue sect has no hope. Quickly, tell the two ancestors about what old man Ouyang said so they can make a decision. If what he said is true, then there is no hope in keeping the Heng Yue peak." Zhou Peng arrogantly looked at the surrounding people and asked, "Who's next?" All of the disciples of the Heng Yue sect became dumbfounded. None of them spoke up, and all of them lowered their heads at Zhou Peng's gaze because none of them wanted to go up. Zhou Peng sneered. He looked down upon them in his heart. However, when his gaze was sweeping over the disciples, he was stunned when he noticed that there was a 3rd-layer disciple who wasn't afraid of his gaze. Wang Lin's expression remained calm as he looked at Zhou Peng. Zhou Peng stared at Wang Lin and coldly asked, "What? Do you want to come up?" Zhou Peng's words attracted everyone's attention. When they realized that Zhou Peng's words were directed at Wang Lin, all of their expressions became strange. Huang Long let out a sigh. Wang Lin was only at the 3rd layer and normally wouldn't be noticed among the disciples, but now, although his cultivation was low, his bravery was commendable. Zhou Peng, seeing that Wang Lin didn't respond, sneered, "Out of the 4 battles, there is still one left. The Heng Yue sect is such a large sect, yet no one dares to come up. I'm very disappointed. Do none of your inner disciples dare to come up?" Elder Su, who was standing next to Huang Long, said, "Sorry, junior brother Sun. Wang Lin, you go." Sun Dezu was stunned and immediately realized what was going on. He angrily said, "Dao Su, although you are my senior brother, you can't disgrace me like this. My disciple is only at the third layer. Letting him go up will only make me lose face. Don't think I don't know what you are thinking. Their sect's head disciple is too strong, so you all are afraid that your disciples will be defeated, shamed, and hurt, so you are sending in my disciple as a scapegoat. My disciple has always been considered trash at the school, so even if he loses, you guys can make an excuse. I refuse to agree to such a disgraceful thing. Dao Su frowned. He really did have such thoughts in mind, but Sun Dezu didn't give him any face and said all of that in front of the Xuan Dao sect. He sneered. His eyes looked at the sect head, Huang Long, and sent some messages. Huang Long sighed and said, "Junior brother Sun, don't bother saying more. Wang Lin, you go up." Sun Dezu angrily threw his sleeve to the sides and looked up into the sky with a mocking smile on his face. Wang Lin clasped his hands and respectfully exclaimed, "As you command." With that, he took a deep breath, then slowly walked forward, and onto the stage. All of the Xuan Dao sect's disciples started to jeer loudly at him. "Heng Yue sect, you have no shame in sending a waste to compete with our eldest martial brother. Our eldest martial brother doesn't even need to deal with this trash. I can kill him with just a thumb. Eldest martial brother, they have already given up. Just send someone else to deal with him. He is honestly pretty pitiful. Be a good person and just send him off without hurting him." Elder Ouyang looked at the two elders and revealed a look of disdain. He laughed and said, "I really got to know the true Huang Long and Heng Yue sect today." Huang Long's face sank. Without a word, he waved his sleeves and left. He didn't have any hope in Wang Lin. He only sent Wang Lin up to be fodder to end the last match. In this exchange, he had already accepted defeat. After all, even if he lost, then if words of it were to spread, it was not so bad, but if words got out that no one even dared to fight, then it would be too disgraceful. None of the other inner disciples dared to go up, so he could only send Wang Lin. Behind him, all of the elders of the Heng Yue sect shook their heads and turned around to leave. Even the inner disciples started to move their feet, unwilling to stick around and lose more face. Chapter 52, Entering the Stage Part 2. Zhou Peng arrogantly laughed and said, "Wang Lin, I can knock you down with one breath, so steady yourself." With that, he sucked in a breath. His body was like a bottomless pit. The clothes of all the spectating disciples started to make flapping sounds as if they were about to be blown off. Wang Lin had never fought with anyone before, so to say he was not nervous would be wrong. He concentrated all of his power into his attraction technique and fanned out. For insurance, he took out a stink bomb. He quickly dissolved Li Shan's divine sense from it and threw it out. With a bang, the stink bomb exploded, and Zhou Peng's body was thrown out from the black smoke. His body heavily slammed into the ground. He was covered in black sludge and wore a dumbfounded expression, just like Sun Hao. The giant python floating in the air also disappeared. This bang surprised the people from the Heng Yue sect. They subconsciously turned their heads and then froze in place. Everyone present was silent. Huang Long was dumbfounded. He thought, this. His heart was in complete chaos, and his ears buzzed. It was as if there was thunder raging right next to his head. No way. When did Wang Lin become this strong? His opponent was the head disciple of the Xuan Dao sect. Dao Su rubbed his eyes in disbelief. Brother Jiang, the one who brought Wang Lin to the Heng Yue sect, also revealed a shocked expression. He thought, this is the junior brother Wang, the one I keep telling to work harder. He is only at the third layer. How did this happen? He is Wang Lin. The one that entered the sect by trying to commit suicide. The piece of trash. The red-faced elder was shocked. He opened his mouth but forgot to breathe. Incredible. Another elder named Song stood there, frozen. Wang Chuo was stunned. His face hardened like a wax statue, and he kept repeating in his head, Wang Lin. Trash. He shook his head. He felt weightless and kept telling himself that this was a dream, an illusion. The female disciple named Su's small hand covered her mouth, and she muttered, "How can this be? When did Wang Lin become so strong? He is clearly only at the third layer." Sun Dezu touched his head and muttered, "This is an illusion. I must be hallucinating. How can there be an illusion in broad daylight? Is this my disciple?" The female named Zhou stared at Wang Lin. Her mind was completely blank. Zhang Kuang had already woken up, but he was afraid of losing face, so he had been pretending to be knocked out. However, he couldn't pretend anymore as he stared at Wang Lin. His pupils shrank, and he thought, "Yes, it's him. It must be him. Dreaming. I must be dreaming." The middle-aged man who accepted the metal from Wang Lin's fourth uncle bit his tongue. Lu Song's reaction wasn't as strong as theirs. This was the first time he had heard Wang Lin's name. He looked at Wang Lin and thought, when did such an expert appear among the inner disciples? Humph, why didn't the elders just send him up instead of sending me first? Did I test wrong back then? Does Wang Lin have really good talent? The Pillhouse's third elder thought as he was still shocked by the scene before him. All of the inner disciples were still frozen. They all exhibited dumbfounded expressions. The people of the Xuandao sect weren't doing any better. Elder Ouyang's eyes widened. Zhou Peng was their secret ace, known as the #1 genius in the cultivation world of Zhao. His true power was that of the 12th layer of qi condensation, but he actually lost. If the Heng Yue sect's elders made a move, then it would be fine, but this was someone even the Heng Yue sect considered trash. It must be because Zhou Peng was careless, it must be. The other two elders looked at each other. They were unable to use their voices. This battle was simply too strange. They were so flabbergasted, that they were unable to talk at the moment. Lu Feng gave Wang Lin a deep look. He was secretly glad he didn't go up, or he would have suffered the same fate, but he couldn't understand why Wang Lin was called trash in the Heng Yue sect when he was so strong. After looking at the Heng Yue sect's people's reactions, it didn't seem like they were faking it. Was it really because Senior Zhou Peng was careless? No matter how much he looked at Wang Lin, he was only at the third layer. All of the other disciples had thoughts similar to Lu Feng's and thought that senior brother Zhou Peng was just careless. They refused to believe that he was truly defeated by Wang Lin. Lu Mei's delicate face also became erratic. Her thoughts were very different from everyone else's. On the first day, Wang Lin had already caught her eye, and now, she looked at Wang Lin with deep interest. Among all the present people that were shocked, Li Shen could be considered the third most shocked person. His body softened, and he fell to the ground, muttering to himself, "Over, it's all over. I sold him the stink bomb, and he used it on senior martial brother. Senior brother lost so fast, he must already be thinking about how to deal with me. Li Shan, why didn't you realize Wang Lin was pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? Wang Lin, you are too despicable, too shameful, too sinister. This time, you have really put me in a terrible position. How will I be able to stay at the Xuandao sect? Senior brother will definitely not forgive me. No, I must think of a way to wash off that black sludge and wash away that stink. This black sludge is my most proud invention. There is no cure other than half a year in the bath. And that stink is something I developed to steal away other people's girlfriends. Even I wouldn't touch it. The only way to get rid of it is to stand in the wind tunnel for a month. There is no other way. I'm finished. Finished." At that moment, Zhou Peng woke up. He was knocked unconscious by the stink and shouted, "Li Shan. I'm not going to forgive you for this." Li Shan couldn't stand this kind of blow. He cried, "Senior brother, I was wrong. Senior brother, please forgive me. I'll never try to profit by cheating again." Zhou Peng's face was full of anger. He moved like lightning while carrying the black sludge and the foul smell with him. He instantly made his way back onto the stage and madly shouted, "Wang Lin, that didn't count. I wasn't ready, and you attacked early. We are going to fight again, and this time, you are not allowed to attack early." Chapter 53, Entering the Stage Part 3. Wang Lin was also shocked and didn't recover for a long time. Zhou Peng was in a rage because he thought that he had been careless earlier. How could a mere third-layer kid beat him? This time, he didn't say a word and summoned the giant python again. He formed a seal with his hand, and the python was about to open its mouth. Wang Lin's attraction force was sent out again. The python let out a whining sound as it disappeared. Zhou Peng's right cheek was swollen. He coughed out a mouthful of blood as he was sent flying again. The moment he landed, he charged back onto the stage. His hair was completely disheveled. Ignoring the blood on the corner of his mouth, he ripped off his clothes and removed the yellow talisman from his chest. His cultivation suddenly rose, and his hair flowed in the air in a strange manner. "Wang Lin. That didn't count. I didn't use my real strength. Let's fight." Wang Lin was now confident in his strength. Without waiting for Zhou Peng, he used the attraction technique and swiped him again. Boom! Zhou Peng, who was still raging, was hit in the face again, and he coughed up more blood. This time, he didn't immediately get up. The spiritual energy in his body was in chaos. He struggled but couldn't get up, and the sense of shame drowned him. He wasn't able to catch his breath and passed out. Everyone was completely silent. Besides the deep breathing of the surrounding disciples, there was no other sound. Huang Long finally recovered from the shock, and his face revealed a look of ecstasy. The more he looked at Wang Lin, the more he liked him. He thought, this Wang Lin is my Heng Yue sect's lucky star. This brat had already become this strong, and he didn't want to fight. He really needs some scolding. I also need to carefully question him on how he did it. Sun Dezhu took a deep breath. He finally recovered a bit and thought, Wang Lin must have some secret. That gourd must not have been the only one. Wang Lin, you have deceived me well. Humph. Dao Su was stunned. The first time could be considered luck, but the next two fights were real fights. What shocked him the most was that after Zhou Peng took off the yellow talisman, his cultivation climbed to the 12th layer, which was the same as him, but he was still sent off the stage with one slap by Wang Lin's attraction technique. What level has this Wang Lin achieved? He stared at Wang Lin for a long time. No matter how much he checked with his divine sense, he couldn't see through Wang Lin's cultivation. The red-faced elder finally recovered and thought, when Wang Lin was accepted into the sect, it was I who approved him. Humph, it seems my eyes weren't wrong. The middle-aged man who accepted Wang Lin's fourth uncle's piece of metal also thought, fate. This is fate. It seems me and this kid have some fate, or I wouldn't have pushed for him to join the sect. I have done a good deed for the Heng Yue sect. I have to talk with the sect head later. Standing next to him, was a yellow-faced middle-aged man. He nodded and thought, when I tested this kid before, I knew that his perseverance was great. It seems he is not normal. Humph, if he wasn't stolen by Sun Dezhu, he would be my, Zhang Rinkai's, disciple. Wang Chuo's mind was finally clear now. He was no longer floating on a cloud but bitterly thought, it turns out he was this strong. All those times I mocked him. He must be thinking of ways to get revenge on me. What do I do? The female named Zhou's eyes lit up. She was completely convinced that Wang Lin had been hiding his strength. She remembered when she thought that he was still at the 3rd layer, and she said all those emotional things to him. Her face turned red. She thought, this Wang Lin is really. He is already so strong, but he lied to me when he said he was only at the 3rd layer. Later, I must get an answer out of him. Humph. The female named Su blinked many times while staring at Wang Lin, then looked at Wang Chuo and thought, how can he compare to brother Wang Chuo? Right now, is the time for brother Wang Chuo to show off, but this Wang Lin is too strong. He was able to send the other sect's head disciple off stage with one slap, not once but 3 times. He really vented for us all. One of the inner disciples secretly laughed and checked out a few of the surrounding disciples and thought, this Wang Lin turned out to be pretending to be a pig planning to eat a tiger this whole time. Too devious. Fortunately, I never mocked him before, or it would have been really bad. Hee hee, I'll be able to see many good shows from all these people that used to mock him a lot. One of the disciples that mocked Wang Lin a lot thought, it's over. I used to point and laugh at him so much, but now he can kill me with just one finger. Your cultivation is already so high, but you still pretend to be so weak. Too shameless. Alas, this Wang Lin is known to hold grudges among the nameless disciples and was nicknamed the Black-Hearted King. I should go and suck up to curry some favor later. Another disciple that used to mock Wang Lin a lot nervously thought, this Wang Lin must be a cool-headed genius. That must be why he didn't even bother to respond when he was the object of my ridicule. This must be like how when a dog bites a person won't bite the dog back. Right, it must be like this. Brother Wang Lin is a genius, how could he bother with someone like me? The Pillhouse's third senior brother sucked in a breath of cold air. His expression was unsettled as he thought, this is bad. I heard that this guy and Wang Hao are relatives and that their relationship is pretty good. How to deal with this? If this was 3 days ago, I could have let Wang Hao go and not have angered him, but now. Wang Hao has already become like that. If he goes and finds Wang Hao, that means I have to face his anger, this Wang Hao can't be kept alive. If I let him go, then he might come back at me for revenge. After the exchange is over, I'll go kill him, and pretend he died from something else. Lu Song lowered his head and looked at the purple clothes on his body. He bitterly laughed and thought, the inner disciples of the Heng Yue sect are about to go into an upheaval. This Wang Lin is not simple. His schemes are very deep. He probably has been keeping his cultivation hidden just for today. Hee hee, I'm afraid Wang Lin's name will spread across the cultivation world of Zhao soon. I must make him a friend and not an enemy. With that, he decided on how he will treat Wang Lin in the future. Zhang Kuang's face was filled with a bitter look. When he got the spirit water, he just thought it was water containing a lot of spiritual power, so he didn't go after Wang Lin. Chapter 54, Entering the Stage Part 4. But, after he compared the spirit water to the spring water in the back mountain, he found out that not only did the spirit water contain several times more spiritual energy, but it also had some other uses. After his careful analysis, he found out that the spirit water could help one retain a youthful look. If it was taken regularly, then one could look young forever. He only took a few drops and immediately noticed this effect. This realization made him very excited. It has to be said that only after one reaches the nascent soul stage will they live forever, but when that happens, it has already been hundreds, if not thousands, of years. Zhang Kuang knew that if this spiritual water was taken out to exchange with other sects, they would go crazy for it, especially the female cultivators at the foundation building or core formation stages. But when he went to check again, he had already lost Wang Lin's shadow. There were only a few dozen inner disciples in the Heng Yue sect. He checked them all but couldn't find one that was similar. He was depressed for a long time because of this. He had also checked up on Wang Lin, but after finding that Wang Lin was only at the 3rd layer, he didn't think it was Wang Lin. But now, he was 100% sure that that person was Wang Lin. This confirmation had no logical reason. It was purely based on his intuition. This Wang Lin has already reached such a high cultivation level. Good thing I didn't do anything to him back then. Alas, the secret of the spirit water must be buried in my heart. It doesn't matter if Wang Lin is really that person or not because the cultivation world is too cruel. Not to mention, fellows from the same sect, even brothers, would kill each other. With Wang Lin's cultivation, I won't be able to fight back at all. Zhang Kuang decided to never mess with Wang Lin. He also involuntarily remembered that back in the back mountain, he thought that Wang Lin wasn't even at the first layer and gave him a lift. He wondered what Wang Lin thought about that back then. There was that time at the river in the back mountain too. While thinking about it, Jiang Quang shivered. He was glad that he didn't do anything back then, or it would have been over for him. It's not that he didn't wonder about how Wang Lin had become so strong, but with Wang Lin's current cultivation level, he immediately stopped himself. He felt that if he kept thinking about it, he would throw his life away. Brother Jiang, who had always scolded Wang Lin to train harder, felt very perplexed. He looked at Wang Lin and gloomily said, "This Wang Lin is someone I personally brought over from the Wang family. He is clearly a normal youth. When he tried to commit suicide, it was I who saved him as well. It's been 5 years, and so much has changed. He is now the Heng Yue sect's #1 disciple. Fate is simply too cruel. I have painstakingly cultivated for 10 years and have only reached the 6th layer." If the Xuandao sect was surprised before, they were now shocked. Zhou Peng could explain the first time as him being careless, but, on the second and third times, he was again and again sent flying, each time with one move. Especially that third time. Zhou Peng removed his yellow talisman and used his full cultivation but was still beaten with one move. This caused all of the Xuandao sect people to be stunned. Lu Feng's jaw fell, and he couldn't regain his senses for a long time. He was convinced that Wang Lin was the Heng Yue sect's ace. He thought, senior brother wasn't careless before but was simply weaker than Wang Lin. However, senior brother is already at the 12th layer. What level of cultivation has Wang Lin reached? Lu Feng muttered, in a tone of disbelief, could he have already reached foundation building? The female disciple named Ouyang, who laughed at Wang Lin before for trying to feed the centipede small animals, was also stunned. The senior brother she admired the most lost. Lu Mei's eyes lit up even more. She had become even more interested in Wang Lin. She secretly thought, he indeed has many secrets. I realized that something was wrong 3 days ago when he was the first person to recover from my charm technique. Several other disciples couldn't even say a word because senior brother was their hero, an expert. Now, this expert was beaten by someone else and beaten in one move without any chance of fighting back. This caused them all to begin to doubt the techniques taught at the Xuandao sect. Elder Ouyang's expression was like Huang Long's expression when the Heng Yue sect's disciples lost all those battles earlier. His face was very bitter. He deeply looked at Wang Lin and was shocked. With his 14th layer cultivation, no matter how he looked at Wang Lin, he could only see that Wang Lin was at the 3rd layer. Is he really a Heng Yue sect inner disciple? Has he already reached foundation building? How else would I be unable to see his cultivation level? The other 2 elders' faces were also very pale. The 3 matches Zhou Peng fought made them understand Wang Lin's power. This was when one of the Xuandao sect disciples suddenly whispered, "What technique did he use? Why do I feel like he used the attraction technique?" A disciple on the side started to analyze with a serious expression. Attraction technique. Not possible. That is the lowest level of technique. How could it contain that much power? If you ask me, it must be some lost ancient technique. You see him waving his hand like it's the attraction technique, but that must be used to cover up this ancient technique. This Wang Lin is too sly. But from how I see it, it looks exactly like the attraction technique. I often practice it myself. I could wave my hand and make objects fly any way I want. Just like what happened to senior brother. Another disciple added, but, on those last few words, his voice became very faint. Another disciple said while rubbing his chin, "Forget it. You try and do what Wang Lin just did. This can't be the attraction technique, it can't be." The other disciples started to discuss what technique Wang Lin used. Some even went and directly asked the 3 elders. Elder Ouyang and the other 2 elders bitterly laughed. He sighed and said, "This is not the attraction technique. I have never seen such a powerful attraction technique. From what I saw, this must be the long-lost dragon capture hand. Dragon capture hand. The other two elders were stunned. They had never heard of this dragon capture hand, but they couldn't see through what technique Wang Lin used either because it just looked too similar to the attraction technique. Elder Ouyang let out a dark sigh and thought, this old man can't see through it either. If I say I don't know, it will lose me too much face, so I can only make something up. Thank you for listening to the light novel of Xian Ni, Renegade Immortal. Please help share, like, and subscribe for future uploads. I greatly appreciate your support.